Hello and welcome to another bikepacking Q&A video. In this video, we are going to answer this question: how do I get the most out of my action camera? I've done the first part of this Q&A video already in last month's Q&A video, where I showed you the different GoPro mounts that I use. I use GoPros, but there's obviously other action cams out there, so that you can see exactly how I set things up. But in this video, we're going to look at how you can get the absolute best out of your action camera. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that I take a huge amount of filming equipment, because filming as well as cycling and bikepacking is one of my passions. So I don't skimp on equipment, I want the absolute best. Now I know that's definitely not going to be for everybody. It's very impractical, it's very heavy, and it's just not going to be right for people. So most people tend to use an action camera like this. This is a GoPro Hero 11. Because it's very convenient, it's small, and it's reasonably affordable, and you can use it for a wide range of things. So action cameras are a fantastic way of capturing footage. However, they are flawed, and there's a couple of major limitations that most people might not be aware of if you're not interested in filming or you're new to the game. There's two things that I think are major limitations to action cameras. The first one is that you have very little control over the camera itself. You tend to have a fixed aperture, which means that the iris or the pupil of the camera is fixed at a certain size, so you can't adjust that to reduce or allow more light into it. You also can't change the focus length or add different quality lenses like you can on a professional camera like this to give different sort of shots. Some action cameras do allow you to add different lenses, but there's nowhere near as much choice as you would get for something like this. And the second major flaw is the audio on these cameras is appalling. The wind noise is the worst thing, because of the fact that the microphone tends to be mounted at the front of the camera and you're going into the wind hits the microphone and we get that awful wind noise, which is the biggest flaw in my opinion. We'll look at those limitations in just a minute, but in order to get the best out of the camera that you've got already, you need to bear a few things in mind. Number one is resolution. You need to be shooting your footage on the highest resolution your camera can do. This is a GoPro Hero 11 and it shoots in 5.3K. Most action cameras shoot at 4K. So make sure that in your settings, you've gone to the highest resolution possible. That means you're going to get more detail captured in your image. And if you need to crop it down or make some adjustments or stabilize it, the more resolution you have, the more you can do that while still keeping it looking really, really fresh. Number two, you need to have a really fast memory card like this SanDisk Extreme that I've got. This is one of the fastest memory cards you can get, and all that means is if you're shooting in the highest possible resolution, and you might be shooting at a really high frame rate, which we'll look at as well, it means you can transfer as much data as possible to the memory card, and the memory card can cope and store that really quickly. Another feature you get with action cameras that you can take advantage of, and the GoPro is no exception, is you can use something called digital lenses. You can't change the lens on most action cameras. You can on some, but on most you can't. You're stuck with the one you've got. So instead, a lot of the action cameras are including digital lenses, which is where the computer software adjusts the look of the lens. On GoPro, the wide setting, it tends to be the standard one, and they have added a few more on this new GoPro. If you're wanting to take a shot that's a little bit more like a camera phone or a phone, because nowadays all phones have cameras, you need to do something like this, linear, or this is the one, not horizon lock. So you need to do something like this, that's linear. That makes it look less spherical like you would get with a wide angle lens. It makes it look a bit more realistic. If you wanted to do flybys or some shots of nature or something like that, then I'd recommend using that digital lens. If you want onboard bike footage, then you could go wide, which is typical, or super view, or hyper view, which basically means that you get a super narrow lens. It tends to look a bit warped the more narrow that you go, so wide tends to be a good preset. But if you are maybe using a chest mount or something like that and you want to capture more footage, then these really narrow ones are great. I said I'd talk about frame rate, and that is something to bear in mind depending on what sort of footage you're trying to capture. I shoot all my footage in 24 frames per second. The reason I do that is that tends to be what films are shot in. And that's what I'm trying to go for with my films. It's as cinematic as possible. So if I shoot in that 24 frames per second, when you're watching it, subconsciously the eye recognizes that this looks similar to a film that I've watched in the past. So therefore it's more of a film than it is a TV show or a action cam shot. You can shoot in 30 frames per second, 60 frames, 120. They have benefits as well, which we'll come on to. If you're looking for a cinematic shot, 24 frames per second or 30 is probably the way to go. If you're looking for something a bit more realistic, then actually 60 frames per second, I've found, looks a little bit more like you would see with your eyes. If you go up to 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second, now you're entering into the realm of slow motion, which also has its benefits. Something that all action cameras can do is shoot up to about 120 or even more. In post-production, you can shorten the length of the video and turn it into a slow motion shot, which is handy if you're wanting a variety of different shots out of your tiny camera. And finally, it's very important that you have a secure bike mount that doesn't shake, doesn't rattle, and you've got stabilization turned on. These cameras are really good for digital stabilization, and if your mount is secure, you can actually get super smooth footage out of this, which is difficult to get from other high-end cameras because they're a lot bigger and bulkier. So make sure you've got the stabilization turned on. On this GoPro, you can have a hyper smooth boost, which is like an extra layer of stabilization. So shooting at a big resolution means that when you're stabilizing, they can bring it in a little bit and it still looks really good quality. So how do we improve the limitations that I talked about at the beginning? Well, the first limitation being the lack of camera control is the hardest to overcome. There are things you can put in place, however. You can use something like these. Now these are ND filters, neutral density filters. They're basically sunglasses that you can put on your camera, and that reduces the amount of light that hits the sensor. Why are we doing that? Well, I mentioned before that the aperture on most of these cameras, that's the pupil that dilates on a more expensive camera to allow less or more light in, is fixed on an action camera. So by using sunglasses, it means that you can have a little bit more control with the shutter speed. The shutter speed is something to consider if you're wanting the best quality smooth footage. The general rule, if you're wanting a rolling shutter that looks smooth, is to think about your frame rate. So in my case, the frame rate is 24 frames per second. Whatever you're using, you want the shutter speed to be 1 over twice your frame rate. That will give you the smoothest looking footage. So in my example, I aim for my shutter speed to be 1/48th of a second, or 1 over 48. You can change it to a multitude of different ones. So I'm using 24 frames per second, and the best one for that is 1 over 48. And actually, that looks, I don't know if you can see that, but that footage on the screen looks instantly better. Before it was quite overexposed, and you can see that leaf in the background that's exposed really nicely. If you go into the settings and change your shutter speed to exactly what you want, so in my case it's 1/48th of a second, you can then look at the screen and see how over or underexposed the image is. Chances are it will be massively overexposed, which means that everything's washed out and you can't see any detail. In order to combat that, then you need a really dark ND filter. So put the ND filter on, and that should reduce the amount of light that hits the sensor, so you can leave the shutter speed at that and keep the footage looking natural. It's a bit of a challenge to get right, especially if you're going through different light settings all the time, like different woodlands where it's dappled light, or straight out into the open, or then into a tunnel, for example. It's really difficult to get it right. So what I would recommend is get a set of ND filters, different types that fit your camera, and then you can run the shutter speed at close to what you're after in pretty much all conditions. It's not an exact science at all, but just by doing this one step using an ND filter, you'll be able to control the light a little bit more and give you more cinematic footage. And the other major drawback, and the worst one about action cameras, is the audio quality is terrible. I've seen so many videos on YouTube and all over the internet where they're in an amazing location, great bike handling skills, it looks fantastic, but all I can hear is that awful wind noise as it hits the microphone. It's like nails running down a chalkboard for me. I have to turn it off after a few seconds. So the easiest way to combat this is by getting an external microphone. You don't have to have something expensive like this Rode VideoMic Pro. I obviously am trying to go for the best quality footage I can, so I'm going for the best equipment, but you really don't need anything like that. Just check before you go out and run and buy an external microphone that your action camera can actually take them. So it needs an audio port. If it doesn't, like the GoPros, they used to a long time ago, but they've realized they can make more money by making you go out and buy a media mod like this, which means that you can plug in an external microphone. So they do that nowadays. But if you need to go out and buy it, I believe it is worth the money. If you're not going to go out and buy another camera, you just want to get the most out of your action camera, the biggest thing you can do is improve the audio. So go out and buy an external microphone, and you need one with a dead cat on it, which is that big fluffy thing you see on top of the microphones. And you see them, news reporters tend to shove them in celebrities' faces as well, to capture audio when it's windy. You definitely need to have one of those. So check to see whether you've got an external audio output on your camera. If not, you might need to buy a different adapter or attachment, but it's well worth doing in my opinion. This is major overkill, and you will see the dead cat in the shot. So just go for a small microphone with a dead cat and you're good to go. Now, before I go, let me show you the difference following these steps can make. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.